Mm.
Yeah.
Also, God willing, by next week, we're going to be upgrading the internet capabilities of the shul. So maybe that will help with not having better live classes. I don't know. That's what they tell me. It's going to be better. So I'm going to trust them and I'm going to say it's going to be better. I'm just going to share this on 2 more platforms. We are live on 3, 2 more to go, and we will get rolling. We are going to start today on page, you guys finished guessing what page? 1208.
What?
The last page of the parsha. Just when you think you figured it out, that's my job. You know, they say the job of rabbis are to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. So, in case you ever get too cozy, we will afflict you. Okay. Yeah, we'll get there in a moment. I'm just sharing it in 2 more places. Here we go.
Oh, 12:40, the 60 days.
There's people all over the place. You're good. Your kids are fine.
No, this is
Someone came through?
I think that's hard.
I think it's the coffee machine. Security patrol.
Robert,
Okay, we are on all our platforms and we are ready to go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to see everyone. We are at the halfway point in the book of Deuteronomy, the book of Devarim. We are in Parshas Kiseitze, which is one of those parshas where, as you'll see in Shul on Shabbos, wherever you go to Shul, it's the same parsha. You'll see that it goes through a lot of different, it throws a lot of mitzvahs around. Right? If you look at the beginning of the parsha, especially in the Chumash that we use, it actually lists how many mitzvahs there are in our parsha, and it has 27 positive commandments. You know that, by the way. At the beginning of each parsha, in this Chumash that we use, it says the amount. So before the parsha starts, it's 27 positive commandments and 47 prohibitions in one parsha. So think about that, right? You got over 70 mitzvahs, 75 mitzvahs. Out of the 613 commandments of the Torah, 75 of them are in this week's Torah portion. So proportionally, right? The UN likes talking about proportionality, so I'll do it too. It's a hot word. The proportionality of mitzvahs in this week's parsha compared to the rest of the Torah is an incredible number. It's like Mishpatim in the book of Exodus. You have Kiseitze in the book of Deuteronomy and Kedoshim in the book of Leviticus. There are certain parshas that are known to have a heavy load of mitzvahs. This is one of them. But at the end of the parsha, the maftir, the last part that we're going to read for maftir, we bring up our old friend whose name is Amalek. And what he's still with us. He's always going to be with us until Mashiach comes. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, Baruch. You said he's still with us. It says until Mashiach comes, Amalek's going to be a problem. Mashiach comes, God's name will be wholesome and his throne will be wholesome, which means Amalek will cease to exist. But until then, we have to suffer with the evil and the irrational evil of Amalek. But if you look here at the end of 1209 in the Maftir, it says, remember what Amalek did to you on your journey out of Egypt, how they surprised you on the road and cut off all the weak people at your rear, when you were parched and weary from the journey, and they did not fear retribution from God for hurting you. Consequently, when God your God gives you relief from all your surrounding enemies in the land which God your God is giving to you as an inheritance to keep as a possession, you must destroy every man, woman, and child and animal belonging to Amalek, so that you erase any reminder of Amalek from beneath the skies. Do not forget what they did to you. You don't have to understand. That's actually what I'm going to talk about today. It's actually one of the topics of this class, is how Amalek represents people who need to understand everything. The opposite, fighting Amalek, is fighting that notion from beginning to end. It's a Western or an Enlightenment or a Greek idea that we have to understand everything. Fascinating that a group of people that, if you look at it through, and actually I'm really glad you mentioned it. If you look at history, all the societies that were super enlightened, super academic, super new age, super brilliant, super philosophical, they ended up being the source of the world's biggest tsaros. Think about the over-sexualization of society, courtesy of the Greeks. Their Olympics and the Gatkas. They walked around naked in their underwear with their little loin cloths, and let's show off our bodies. Right? The big, brilliant Socrates, go on with your list of all the geniuses. Aristotle, what did they bring to the world? Brilliant people. Truly brilliant people. They lacked any moral compass whatsoever. Germany, the most enlightened academics in the world, brought us a Holocaust. They were the Enlightenment part of the world. So if you go throughout history, it's those who need to understand. I don't understand, by the way. I understand it on some level, but it's not a comfortable thing to see that God says that when it comes to killing Amalek, you got to take out men, women, children, and animals. You look more bothered by the animals than about the children, which is very fascinating to me in itself. You perked up by animals. I literally said babies, and you're like, no problem. Animals, whoop. It's okay. We can have that fight later. The point is, I don't have to understand it, but I need to understand there's a creator to this universe, and the creator of this universe knows the fabric of the creation that he created, and he knows when a life has purpose in this world and when it doesn't. And he's telling you clearly, unequivocally, that if they are part of the nation of Amalek and they carry the genetics of Amalek, they are a problem for humanity. Now, I should be very clear on the onset that I don't want anyone here to think that I'm referring to anyone today. I'm not. I'm referring to Amalek, the nation of Amalek, which doesn't exist, or at least we don't know who they are in this time, day and age. And yet, the Torah still makes, the remembering Amalek is still remembered every single day in our prayer. It's one of the 6 remembrances that we do every single day. Amalek, well, that's our big problem. Maybe they should switch it. Remember Hitler. Maybe it's more relevant. Remember Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas. You should know that name, the guy who orchestrated the murder of 1,200 Jews in our lifetime. But what's this business with Amalek? What's the obsession? And not only that, it's connected there. Don't forget, and it's not enough not to forget, that you have to eradicate their name today. What am I supposed to do with that information today? Who should I eradicate? And obviously the Torah is not telling me to eradicate anyone because we don't do that in today. There's no temple, there's no Sanhedrin, there's no system for that. So for over 2,000 years and more, because it really goes back to the first temple, we don't do this. So what's the point? We're talking about some theoretical Amalek, unless it's not theoretical at all. It's a war that we are having with an internal demon called Amalek. Sometimes it manifests itself from outside sources, but mostly, as most demons or most negative forces, it's right within ourselves. And that obligation to eradicate that within ourselves is very much relevant today as it was in any type. No, it's not metaphorical. It's an obligatory commandment. Just you have to do it internally. And let me tell you, it's a lot harder to fight Amalek that's in your own soul than it is to fight Amalek with a gun. Amalek with a gun, you shoot him, you kill him. Goodbye, Charlie. But if there's no Amalek that you have to kill physically, because it's not our role in today's day and age, and yet the Torah not only commands us to do it, but makes us say it every single day in our prayers, every single day of the year. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, doesn't matter what day of the year. We're always talking about Amalek, Amalek, Amalek. It's like an obsession. We'll talk about that. There's a Megala Amukis. Megala Amukis, I found out, 5-6 months ago, Dimitri was sitting here in Shul, and he says, my mother's great-great-great-grandfather was a great rabbi in Poland. His name was Reb Nosson Spiro. He said, the name rings a bell, and I can't figure out why. So I quickly ran to the encyclopedia over here, and I looked, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a grandson of the Megala Amukis. Dimitri in our Shul is a grandson of the Megala Amukis. The Megala Amukis was a rabbi in Krakow, Poland. He was also a Kabbalist that taught the teachings of Rabbi Isaac Luriana Kabbalah. And he wrote a book on the Torah called the Megala Amukis. He says Amalek, the name Amalek, and we'll get to this in detail in a moment, but the name itself is an acronym. Ayin Mem Lamed Kuf. Those 4 Hebrew letters represent 4 names. Ayin is for Amram. Mem is for Moshe. Lamed is for Levi. And Kuf is for Kahas. Moshe was the son of Amram, who was the son of Kahas, who was the son of Levi, who was the son of Jacob, who was the son of Isaac, who was the son of Abraham. I want you to put that on a shelf for a moment. I'm going to get back to that. I want to give you a little bit of a history lesson, because I think this is where a lot of Jews, we speak about a lot here in the classes and Shabbos at the meals, that the best ammo that a Jew can ever have is knowledge. And unfortunately, Hebrew schools and Jewish day schools are a master failure for the most part. Yeah, as a general rule, when it comes to education, they create very healthy Jewish people, but knowledge-wise, knowledge-based, unless you're going to an Orthodox school, these community day schools, it's better than other things. But in Yiddish, we say "Tegev Kaparas." It's not a super helpful reality. But if they did, they would educate children with basic information. So we talk about this enemy Amalek. Who was he? Not what did he do? Who was he? The original Amalek, the guy who started this tribe of irrational anti-Semites that hated the Jewish people. Who was he? He was a descendant of Abraham and Isaac. Remember, Abraham and Isaac were two of the three founding fathers of Judaism. Isaac had two sons. He had a son named Jacob, who was the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. So by definition, he was a grandfather of the Jewish people, of Moses, who was the son of Levi, of Aaron the high priest, and all the Jews. So unless you're a convert to Judaism, you are a descendant of one of those 12 tribes. And then you had Esau, Jacob's older brother, twin brother, right? Remember, he sold the birthright, so he was the older one. He came out first. Esau had a son named Eliphaz. Eliphaz had a son named Amalek. Amalek was a grandson of Abraham and Isaac, just not a grandson of Jacob. There's an incredible writing, just for, so again, history is something I love. I'm a little bit of a history buff. The Rebbe married the Rebbetzin, his wife, Rebbe Chaim Mushka, in December of 1928 in Warsaw, Poland. They couldn't do it in Russia because the previous Rebbe was expelled from the Soviet Union already. And so the Rebbe's parents who were in the Ukraine could not come. They were not allowed to come, but they got married in Warsaw. After the wedding, the Rebbe moved with the Rebbetzin, which was very unconventional. He moved to Berlin. He went to the University of Berlin. He was there till 1933, after which he moved to Paris, and he lived in Paris till eventually Paris, Marseille, Vichy, and eventually got out of there just in time in 1941 and made it to the United States. But they didn't want to be in the limelight. They wanted the previous Rebbe to be in the limelight, so the Rebbe went to school in Berlin. But for holidays, they would come home. What was home? So, for example, for the high holidays in Sukkot of 1931, so 2 years after they were married, they were living in Berlin. They went to Atwotsk in Poland, where the previous Rebbe was headquartered at that time. They spent Yontif, the holiday, with the Rebbetzin with her parents, and the Rebbe with his in-laws, and they spent the Yontif there. At that Sukkot experience during Simchat Beit HaShoeva, the intermediate days, the Rebbe spoke. And the Rebbe wrote notes in his diary of things that he spoke about at that event. One of the things he was writing about was this Megala Amukis from Dimitri's great-grandfather about Amalek. And the point was that Amalek thought he could attack the Jews because, hey, I'm a descendant of Abraham and Isaac too. You got spiritual powers, I got spiritual powers. And by Amalek being the acronym of Amram, Moshe, Levi, Kahaz, it reminds each of us that the Jewish people are one generation closer to the patriarchs than Amalek. Why? Levi was the son of Jacob, was the son of Isaac. So Levi, the tribe of the 12 tribes, was a grandson of Jacob. What was Amalek? A great-grandson. Amalek was the son of Eliphaz, who was the son of Esau, who was the son of Isaac. So it's one more generation further. And so the Magala Mukas is really teaching us that Moshe was a little maybe concerned. Then he realized we're always one generation closer to the patriarchs. So we have the upper hand on the spiritual energy. So we have the ability to take out Amalek. But I do think it's important for Jews to understand that the greatest enemy that ever lived for the Jewish people was not a random outsider. The greatest enemy that ever fought the Jews and came for the Jews, and not only fought the Jews, took away the fear of all the other nations. Once they saw Amalek messing with the Jews, the rest of the world said, oh, maybe it's not so bad to mess with the Jews anyhow. I mentioned that in a video this morning that I did on social media, but Rashi says it's like a person who sees a very hot spring or a hot bathtub, and everyone's scared to put their foot in because they're going to get burned. Then one guy puts their foot in. What happens when you put your foot in? It's very hot for that person, but now that the body's gone in, it cools the temperature a little bit, so the next person is not scared to put their foot in. Amalek was that person. Nobody wanted to mess with the Jews. Not because they were scared of the Jews. They saw the miracles and the wonders that God did. They said, I'm not going to mess with these people. They had the super connection with God. Then came Amalek, a family member, a grandson of Esau. Maybe it wasn't him, maybe it was his children, but they were part of that tribe. They came and they said to the world, we're not scared, we can take them on. And the rest of the world said, oh, if they can take them on, maybe we shouldn't be scared either. And they started something very dangerous. And that's why there is no room for, should we let Amalek stick around? Not one of them. Because they represent that level of evil where they come with the name, they're part of the family. Moses Mendelssohn, what about him?
Isn't he kind of the one that started the Enlightenment movement? So he kind of did the same kind of thing. And
Listen, Moses Mendelssohn maybe in the Enlightenment era, but I mean, throughout Jewish history, in the Talmud and the Mishnah, we talk about the Karaites and the Sadducees and the Bethusians, all these different groups of people who try to mess with Jewish tradition. The sadness for Moses Mendelssohn is that his own grandson, Felix Mendelssohn, the famous pianist, considered himself a Christian. None of his descendants remained identifiably Jewish.
they were bucketing the Jewish.
No, but Moses Mendelssohn at least claimed to want to believe in the Torah. He just wanted to make his own interpretation, whatever. But his grandchildren were fully Christian. Theodor Herzl, his grandchildren were all Christian. You can't create your own religion and then expect the results to be any different than a new religion. Amalek wanted to get rid of Jews. And he used the power of being part of the Jewish family. Like today, that people say, a lot of the Arabs say, we're descendants of Ishmael. First of all, no, you're not. Not every Arab in the world is a descendant of Ishmael. There's plenty of other original Arabs in the world that are not descendants of Ishmael. And certainly not every Muslim. Maybe even if you say the Arabs are descendants of Ishmael, not the Muslims, just Arab. They have to be from a certain lineage, and we have no idea who that is. The Persians are definitely not descendants of Ishmael. Right? Remember, Abraham had more than one wife. And they had more than one, he had other children that went to Asia, went to other places. In other words, I don't want to get into the whole history now. Amalek thought he could take them on, but the question still remains, what does it have to do with us today? Other than getting a history lesson, there has to be something more concrete in why we're sitting today in Bozeman, Montana on a beautiful night when we could be taking a hike at Pete's Hill, and we're sitting in a shul or on Zoom, and we're learning about Amalek. And we say it every day in our davening. Why? Shabbos, Miriam, the six of the six, and Amalek. Don't ever forget that. Fill in the blank, Amalek. So I'm going to share with you a combination of thoughts from 1956 as well as the early 70s, 1973, from two different talks of the Rebbe that I felt really bring together the issue that Amalek really represents. You can have two descendants of Abraham and Isaac and represent two very different approaches to life. You have the Jacob family, which is Moshe and the Jewish people that came through Jacob. What does it say about Jacob? It says, Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim. He was a simplistic, wholesome person who dwelled in the tents. And what does Rashi tell us? In the tents of Torah. He was a student. He studied. Then you have Amalek, who's a descendant of Esau. What does it say about Esau? Ish Yedei Atzayid, a person who knows how to hunt. Ish Sada, a person of the field. That's what it says in Genesis about Esau. Right? So if you think about it, all of this is before the Torah was given. Amalek attacked the Jews when they left Egypt before they got to Sinai. It was immediate. So there was no Torah yet. And in a world where there wasn't the Torah, you had the Jacob approach, you had the Esau approach, you had the Jewish people's approach, you had the Amalek approach. And what are the different approaches? Amalek was a descendant of Abraham and Isaac, so he understood the value of that. We're going to get a Torah. He wasn't opposed to the Jews getting a Torah. So what was bothering him? Why did he try to stop the Jews from getting to Sinai? He was not ready to accept the Tam. It says about Jacob that he was an Ish Tam. He was a wholesome person. He was a simplistic person. Amalek didn't want that. He didn't want the Jews to accept the Torah in a way where there's simplicity and wholesomeness, where they accept it before they fully understand it. That's dangerous. By the way, till this very day, it's what made every generation of anti-Semites crazy. If you think about the story of Hanukkah with the Maccabees, the Syrian Greeks, they said, no, you want to do Judaism? We have no problem. Just don't do the Jewish things that make no sense. And in their mind, for example, circumcision made no sense. Or sanctifying the moon made no sense. Whatever day the Shabbos made no sense. But no sense. It was all about logic. Logic reigns supremely. Yet people till today on American television and radio, and they say, if I don't understand it, toast. First of all, why do you think you're so smart that you could understand the infinite? Why do you think that you're smarter than God? I understand you could be smart, you could understand most things, but the idea that logic should be the premise instead of godliness being the premise, that was Amalek's mistake. And it goes back to something in history way earlier. When did Ishmael, going back to a different character, but when did Ishmael have his circumcision? When he was 13. Remember, I spoke about the difference between Isaac having it at 8 days old and Ishmael having it at 13. It's the same idea. Isaac had a bris when he didn't understand it. His relationship with God was based on an eternal bond, not on logic. He didn't make a choice. Ishmael, a choice. Logic. Makes sense to me to join this people. Esau, in that same department, if you wish. Oh, Amalek, you guys want to take a Torah, by all means, Torah is wonderful. But Nasav and Ishma, that I'm going to accept what God says before I fully comprehend it, that's ridiculous. Who accepts things without understanding it? Amalek, on the other hand, it says, Ish Yedei Tzayid, like Esau knew how to hunt. You hear the word? He doesn't say that he hunted. It says he knew, Yedei Das. He knew the skill. He knew the knowledge. He was all about knowledge, learning to understand different things. And he was good at it. Cold, collected, logical, like an academic. You know what academics, I want to say, you know where academia could lead you to? Esau was an academic. You know where he ended up? A rapist, a murderer, an adulterer, an idolater, whatever sin you ever thought of, was on Esau's resume. But he was an academic. He was so logical. When logic is your foundation instead of godliness being the foundation, you're barking up a very, very dangerous tree. There's no one that could deny that Germany of the 1930s was the center of wisdom and academia of the world. Until today, by the way, there are philosophers, there are writers, there are authors that are still trying to reconcile how such an enlightened people ended up being such murderers, sadistic murderers. And the answer is, it's actually a fairly simple answer. I don't have to write a book about it. What is the foundation of your life? If you think your brain, your intellect is king, and you'll never do anything that you don't understand, you're in real trouble. And actually, what makes Amalek crazy is when they meet Jews, they meet Moses, they meet Levites, they meet descendants of their own ancestors who are excited about Judaism, even if they don't fully comprehend it, because it feels right. I told Stefan today that you meet a guy's 80 years old. He tells you last time I put on my tefillin was when I was bar mitzvah. Right? So we're talking about 60 plus years since the last time the guy put on his tefillin. 67 years ago. And you put on tefillin, he doesn't know Hebrew. He's repeating words with you in a language he doesn't know. He says Shema Yisrael, and suddenly you see tears coming down his cheeks. He's emotionally overwhelmed. Why? Why would a person be emotionally overwhelmed about something that's so foreign to them? And if it was so important to them that they're willing to cry over it, why did they put it on for the last 67 years? So why they didn't put on for 67 years, that's just reality of life, of where life takes you. But the fact that they're inspired to tears or they're emotionally overwhelmed with tears is because tefillin doesn't speak to the brain, right? There's nothing logical. It looks like you look like a crazy person. And that's why I love doing it in airports, because everyone's trying to figure what the hell's going on here. I davened, by the way, on the flight from the Netherlands to Seattle. Stood up with my I actually have a picture of it, my talis and my tefillin. I loved it. Let them have a little curiosity. What's up with these Jews? It's my secret. It's a secret box. I talked to the Mossad. I told you that thing when you go on a plane and the first thing you do, you see another Jew in the seat. Give them a look like that. Everyone on the plane thinks you guys are running some cabal. You never met the guy. You never meet him again. But you give him a look like, we got you. So The point is, why would a guy cry? It's the neshama. And the idea that people think it's impossible to have a relationship with anything if it's not intellectual based is baloney. It's the same people who tell you it was love at first sight. The same society that tells you it could be love at first sight. And before you know it, you've hooked up with someone for 10 days because you met them at a bar while you were drunk. I'm sure that was a super intellectual decision. I'm assuming it was your enlightened academic mind that brought you into that hotel room. It's the same people telling you, you're doing religion without intellect. Like, sweetie pie, let's have a conversation about who lives a life that makes more sense and who lives a life that makes a lot less sense. I'll have that debate any day. Any day. But Rabbi, it's okay. I don't need to fully understand God. As a wise man once said, if I understood God, I would be God. The whole point is God is infinite. I'm finite. I will do my best to try to understand why he commands me. But Amalek comes and says, no. With this cold and collected academic approach, you can't do it if you don't understand it. Baloney. We do a million things we don't understand. This whole society is full of people that are a bunch of copycats doing things that make absolutely no sense. And they do it because that's what the societal pressure. So I'd rather have pressure from Almighty God to do something, because I know that's going to enhance my relationship with Almighty God, than pressure from drinking Tide, whatever those Tide pods that the college students, the very brilliant academic, Tide pods, laundry detergent. Oh, yeah, they went to Harvard. They have an incredible intellect to eat Tide pods. So it really brings to the point of Amalek is not apathetic, right? We've always, and I'm probably to blame for that as well, that I've translated Amalek as being apathy. It's somewhat apathy, but I think it needs to be explained, because apathy is a one word that Amalek knows God. He's a descendant of Abraham and Isaac. He knows godliness and he knows God, and he says, you know what? Just because I know it doesn't mean I can't rebel against it. Meaning, yes, it exists, but I don't care. Because if I don't understand it, it's not worthy. There's zero humility. We said before about humility and God are very much intertwined. Humility would mean a person saying, it's impossible for me to fully comprehend God. I will do my best in the way God allows me to understand the layers and layers of understanding of mitzvahs. And then if you take the Hasidic layers of understanding, there's so many layers of interpretation. The Hamalitical and the Halachic and the Hasidic and the Musar. There's so much to understand and learn, but not as a condition that if I don't understand it, I won't do it. Because that's not Judaism. Judaism is a pursuit of understanding, but with a foundation of an eternal bond that's not based on logic. Which is why you could scream all you want that you're not Jewish, but if you were born to a Jewish mother, there ain't nothing you can do about it. And by the way, it makes some of these young, woke Palestine college kids, it makes them go bananas. They want to renounce their Judaism. Sorry, you can't. First of all, they're not the type that are going to join another religion. They just want to renounce it for the heck of renouncing it. But the Chabad rabbi on campus is always going to consider you Jewish. So you can run, but you can't hide. We're coming for you. It's amazing. And that's because it's something so much deeper than logic or understanding. So even when your own logic, bless you, even if your own logic says, I'm not interested, it doesn't change the fact. You will always remain a Jew. And therefore, even if you choose to listen to Amalek, which I really hope you don't, and decide that everything has to be logical, which again is a contradiction from beginning to end, it's not what Judaism represents. Judaism represents the beauty of doing it sometimes, not always, but sometimes when it doesn't make sense. Right? We look at those stories, I look at those stories, and until October 7th, they were stories that happened 80 years ago in the Holocaust. This person said Shema while they were going into Auschwitz. This one circumcised their child in Bergen-Belsen. You read these stories, you're like, these people were, then October 7th happened. And you realize it happened in my lifetime. It's not a story from the Holocaust, but the people were doing escaping from the Nova Festival in those little concrete bunker things where they were trying to hide before the grenades were saying Shema, singing songs together, protecting each other in ways that make no sense. Or Daniel Pearl, when he was killed back in Pakistan, was it 20 years almost already, or maybe it wasn't. And he was living as a Buddhist. Daniel Pearl married a woman who wasn't Jewish, and he even though his parents were very much Jewish, he identified as a Jubu, one of those Buddhist Jews, Jubus or Bujus, whatever you want to call them. And yet, when they put a sword to his neck, right? What did he say? He said, "My name is Daniel Pearl, the son of Judah, and whatever Pearl, and my grandparents, there's a street in Bnei Brak in Israel named for my grandparents." I still today, when I say that, I get chills. Here's a Jew who spent 30 years running away from his identity. So much so he was willing to embrace not just another religion, but Buddhism, which is potentially questionable, not as much as Hinduism, but it's questionably idolatry in its old form. And yet, right before he's dying, and he has the last words to tell his wife and his family back home and the entire American population, "My name is Daniel Pearl, son of Judah and whatever Pearl. And in Bnei Brak in Israel, there's a city named for my parents, my grandparents." That's because Judaism is not about logic. And that's why when you go into a shul on Yom Kippur, we're going to have Yom Kippur in a month from today. Today's the 10th of Elul, so it's going to be in a month from today. You go into a shul on Yom Kippur and you ask a Jew sitting there in the back row who looks a little lost, say, "Hey, my dear Jew, my fellow Jew, do you believe in God?" He goes, "Nah, I don't get involved in theology." You say to him, "Excuse me, you're in shul, it's Yom Kippur. Why are you here if you don't believe in God?" He says, "What do you mean? It's Yom Kippur." And he says it to you with a straight face, like, "I don't understand what your question is. Where else would I be? It's Yom Kippur. But you said you're not sure if there's God." What does that have to do? It's Yom Kippur. When you come to a Seder, and I share this from Honest Friedman, it's a fascinating thing. You come to a Seder and you ask a guy, "Tell me, you believe in the Exodus from Egypt?" He goes, "Well, there's no real archaeological proof of the Exodus." Goes, "So what are you doing at a Pesach Seder?" He goes, "What do you mean? It's a Seder. It's Passover." And he doesn't realize, or she doesn't realize, the contradiction there. Because Judaism is not a logical faith. It has beautiful logic. It has beautiful teachings. It has layers of fascination. There's nothing more fascinating in the realm of academia than a Jewish library. For all the libraries in the world, you want to get blown away by brilliance in academia? This is a fraction. This is a tiny fraction. My own library at home is a tiny fraction. It doesn't end. It's a myth. But the foundation is not Chaim Brooks' logic. Because Chaim Brooks' logic would have told him a long time ago to check out of Judaism. But my soul, my eternal connection, the foundation of my relationship with God, which is not based on logic, it's based on a deep eternal bond, that's not something that can go away. And that's something Amalek made a mistake. He thought he can take us on and try to brainwash us to think like him, that everything must be logical, like the Greeks tried, like the Syrian Greeks tried, like the Enlightenment tried, like every other movement that came that tried to convince us that we have it wrong and they have it right because they're brilliant. We are way more brilliant, and we have a foundation of God, which is why we're still around and the academics are nowhere to be found. And America woke up since October 7th and said, "Oh my gosh, what happened to our campuses? They became hotbeds for insanity." I know what happened. It's not rocket science. You kicked God out of the campus. The academics decided they're smarter than God. They're brilliant. And the next thing I knew, they were standing celebrating Yihya Sinwar, celebrating Nasrallah, defying every aspect of science. And they're all in America scratching their head. What happened? Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Stanford, my gosh, people pay $60,000, $80,000 a year to send your kid, and they come back as quackadoodle-doos. They come back totally crazy with ideas that, if I was a parent, I'd probably be hiding in a basement from bushes from embarrassment. Right? They used to say it on Twitter. It said, "I'm very proud to say that none of my children ever went to Harvard." Used to be, "Oh my gosh, my kid went to Harvard. Baruch Hashem. None of my kids ever went to Harvard. May Hashem bless me." Like, that story on Fiddler on the Roof?
Yeah.
On Fiddler on the Roof, he says, "What blessings should we make from the Tsar?" May God keep the czar far, far away from us. May God keep our children far, far from the Ivy Leagues. Not because we don't like academia. We love academia. We love brilliance. We actually love even the teachings of Aristotle. But it has to have the moral compass of a God, the God of Israel, because otherwise academia could take you to cuckoo places. But if you have a moral foundation, which comes from sometimes not figuring it all out and just doing it because that's what God says to do, you have a much better chance of having a meaningful, purposeful, and truly enlightened, brilliant life where you're not hurting other people, you're not living with distorted ideas, and you're not buying into the Amalek think tank. By the way, if Amalek was around today, there'd probably be an Amalek think tank in DC sitting and telling you why his ideas are brilliant. I just thought about it. The Amalek think tank. I could actually, in my mind, I could actually pick who would be part of it. That I'm not going to say out loud. But the point is, that's not who we are. We are B'nai. We're not just the sons of Isaac and Abraham. We are the sons of Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham. We represent the full moral compass that comes with being part of the tribes of Israel to take on the insanity that Amalek represents. And even though we don't kill anyone because it's not our job, we got to kill the Amalek inside of us that tells us and whispers to us that we should do it differently. You don't understand it. Why should you do it? It makes no sense. These laws, those laws, do it because God said so. And if you could figure out the logic later, because you studied hard and you went through all the books, then by all means, it's wonderful. But don't let that be the foundation, because you don't want to turn into that. Wishing you all a wonderful evening. Be inspired, be uplifted, be enlightened, truly enlightened with the light of Torah mitzvahs. Sei gesund, and we'll see you back here, Be'ezrat Hashem, next week. Think so? Yeah, next week. See you later. Any questions? I'm not going to tell you about the Netherlands. I'm telling you.